last session we have tried to keep it interactive. So I will be asking a few questions, and there is a giveaway gift to anybody who answers the question. We have a small device. I will explain all the devices in a few minutes. First, I want to ask a few questions so that we can design the talk according to the audience. How many of you know what segmentation is?
Image segmentation.
Okay, perfect. How many of you know what pose detection is? And okay, how many of you have tried pose detection at least once? Okay, very less. Okay. How many of you know what edge devices are? Okay. So segmentation almost everybody knows, so we will not go into the theory there. Okay, we'll start the talk. So me and Mohsin used to work before together, and we realized there were a few problems in the world around us. One, we saw that a lot of machine learning is happening, but most of it is happening in the backend. Not audible? Audible now? Audible now? Okay. So, sorry? Okay. Okay, I'll switch to presentation view. I'll have to keep coming back to this view. So, when we saw that there's a lot of machine learning happening, but it is mostly in the backend in form of pipelines. Companies are using it, e-commerce companies, finance companies, but users in the end, consumers have very less products which they can interact with and which use machine learning. So, for example, mapping data was available for a very long time, but Google Maps actually democratized it. It put maps in everybody's hands, and everybody has an application which they can use daily to map the earth around them. So we saw that very less machine learning applications are available for general users to interact with. How many of you have actually a machine learning model running on your laptop or your mobile that you use on day-to-day basis, developed by yourself? Maybe to scan your receipts or maybe for face recognition on your laptop. Nobody? Absolutely nobody? Okay, so we want to address that problem. We want to show how easy it is to actually create a system and hack it in very less time. So we were working in a health company. I was working in a health company. He's still there. We saw that exercising is something that everybody should do, but very less people actually end up doing it, and the gap is very huge. There are many reasons for it. First is gyms. They are like archaic business models. They take a lot of money and then you never go there. Okay. How many of you have actually taken a gym membership and not gone? Okay, this is more the number of people who know segmentation, by the way. Okay, so a lot of people don't go to the gym. And in Bangalore, there is a lot of traffic. You don't want to get out. There has to be something that keeps you engaged at home. Exercising is not easy. You need motivation, you need feedback to know whether you're doing right or wrong. There are a lot of factors involved. So we saw these two problems and we decided, okay, why don't we solve these two together? So in this session today, we'll try to keep it interactive. We don't have a notebook. We'll run different programs. All these are checked in available to you. Please go back at your home and try these. We encourage that. And give us feedback on the GitHub repo also. So we will try to build a system which teaches you yoga at home. So yoga is basically a set of poses. There are about 100 poses. Each pose requires twisting your body in a different way, and it exercises different muscles of your body. But these poses are tricky. So this is one exercise to go home and try. Find a friend of yours who has not done yoga before. Show them one of yoga poses from internet or this one, and then ask them to do it. And they will obviously get it wrong the first time, so explain to them how to correct it. Just like using hand motion, no hand motions, just try to do it verbally, and you will realize how difficult it is to give feedback about getting a person's pose correct if you are doing it verbally, if you are not touching them. So the feedback for this, we realized, has to be visual. It has to be something the person can immediately understand by looking at what they are doing wrong. So today in the hack session, we are going to build this. A trainer which shows you yoga poses and then gives you feedback so you can get in the correct yoga pose. So what do we need to build such a system? Okay, so since most people do not know what pose detection is, I will first run a demo to show what pose detection is. Okay, can you see what is happening? So you have to get out of the screen. Okay, you can see my body and Mohsin's body. So this is basically detecting body points from my body right now and showing them to you. Okay. So first we need a model like this that runs very, very fast. Someone took OpenPose as name in the morning. Has anybody tried OpenPose? how fast was it? It's very, very slow. It's actually around 0.1 FPS on a laptop with just CPU. That is, it takes 10 seconds to process one frame. You can't run it live on a laptop which doesn't have a GPU. Even if you have GPU, it is pretty slow if it's a laptop GPU, not a desktop GPU. So we need a pose model which detects your pose so that your camera can see how your body is shaped right. Second, we need some hardware where we can actually run this model. As I said, on laptops, OpenPose is at least very, very slow. So we need some hardware where we can run this fast. Third, the model has to be accurate enough to give you correct feedback. Let's say my hand is here, the model should be able to see the hand is here. It should not say the hand is here. Okay? Otherwise, it will get me into a wrong pose. And then fourth, when we show the user a pose, let's say this pose, and user gets the body in certain shape, we should be able to measure how far are they from this pose so that we can give them correct feedback that no, your score is very, very low, you have to move in a certain way to get into this pose. So we need a way to measure distances between two different poses. So these are the 4 requirements that we have. Okay, most of the models that we train are huge, 100 MB, 40 MB, 50 MB. Has anybody tried a model which was like 2 MB or maybe a few KBs? Okay, nobody. Okay, fine. Most of the devices that are available with people are GPUs, and most of the devices which are available for deployment are small hardwares like Raspberry Pi or Jetson Nano, which have very less processing capability. So if your models are huge and slow, it is impossible to distribute something to a general public. If I write a model that takes 100 MB, that takes 2 GB of GPU RAM, most of the people will not be able to actually run it. So here we are going to build something that runs on a normal laptop at runtime. So how do you do that? One very simple technique is quantization. You take a large model that is accurate, and then you take all its weights and you convert them to integer weights. Okay. You can convert them to integer, you can convert them to 16-bit. That reduces model size a lot, and it also decreases the computation time. So it speeds up the model by 4 times if you convert it to an int 8. What does this do actually? So let's say I make a mobile app. The mobile app does food detection for you. The model is deployed on the mobile. If I want to update the model and my model is 100 MB, the app update will cost a huge amount of data. Nobody will update an app if every update is 100 MB. So updating the model becomes very difficult. Small models are much easier to update. So you can do quantization post-training, and there is some accuracy loss when you do quantization. So we will now give a demo of training a model and actually quantizing it. Let me run this model and then we'll talk about something else meanwhile. Okay, so I'll run this model and leave it to our training. You will see some screen coming up. Okay, so for those who do not know what segmentation is, this is segmentation. We are only doing person segmentation. So this is a person, and we have to extract their body and create a binary mask out of it. The person should be white, everything else should be black. Okay? So this model is training here on my laptop. We have a very small data set of 500 images that we are going to train this on. Okay, let this model train. I'll talk about something else meanwhile. So there are devices in market that let you run models on your machine very, very fast. These are called inference engines. So for example, there is one which is here. It's a small USB attachment called Coral. Okay, it has 4 teraops. It can run pose detection, which is normally very slow on CPU, at 50 frames per second. This is a specifically designed hardware just to run models, not to train them. You can't do training on this. You can just do inference on this. Another thing, it only runs 8-bit models and it doesn't support all the layers. So you have to do some work to actually get your models to run on this. Another is a Jetson Nano. This is by NVIDIA. It's a small module. It's actually a full computer. The previous one I showed is a USB attachment. You can attach it to a working laptop or to a desktop or to this also to increase its computation power. This contains a small GPU on it, and this behaves pretty much like a desktop. If you have used Raspberry Pi, this is like a Raspberry Pi with a GPU on top. That's it. There is another level to which people go, very, very small models. I think there is another talk today about this. This is a very small inference chip. This is a SparkFun chip. This is what we are giving away today to anybody who answers one question that we will ask later in the talk. This runs a TensorFlow model. Right now it is deployed on this. When you say Google, there is a small light that turns on green. You can keep this. This is yours if you answer the question. So, okay, this model is still training. My speech is finished. So what we'll do is, okay, we'll leave the training, we will just use a pre-trained model here to show what we're talking about. So this model, when it is trained, this is how much it measures. It measures 62 MB in size, okay? And I'll also show how fast it is. We'll compress this model and see how small it becomes after compression. Okay, so what is this compression? How much code do I have to write to actually quantize my models? This is it, that's it. TensorFlow comes with a library called TF-Lite. Give it your model, it will compress it. It is less than 4 lines of code. You can specify what type of device you're running on. If you're running on CPU, use FP16 or Int8. Okay, if you're running on a GPU, use Float32, and it will do the rest of work for you. It's very small, it speeds up your models by a lot, as we'll just see. So very less work actually, but most people don't do it when they deploy models to production. They don't quantize it before doing it. Okay, so okay, the compression I ran here is done. This is the size. Okay, you can't see it. Let's see the size now. This is the model from 60 to 67 MB something, it became 19 MB now. So it has reduced the model size by about 3 in just 4 lines of code. Now we'll compare the speed of these models. The first one was a Keras model. The second one is a, so first I'll show the Keras model that I was training. So this is a Keras model. Sorry, wrong camera. Okay, you can see, right? This is a Keras model, it is working at 11 FPS, running on the laptop. Okay, it is segmenting me roughly, it is not trained much, there is not a lot of data we have used. Now we will see the compressed model. This is the compressed model. Okay, you can see it is detecting something, the accuracy has dropped a lot. Okay, let me show the FPS also. Okay, let's run both of them again, but on a different camera so you can see more accurately. Okay, so this is the Keras model. Okay, there is Mohsin also. You can see me. Okay, the FPS as it shows is around 11. This is the compressed one. You can't see the FPS. Accuracy is very, very low, but the FPS is around 25 to 27. Can you see the FPS? Okay, so the model becomes very fast, but it becomes much inaccurate. There is a lot of accuracy it loses. Okay, so let's come back to this device. So this is an 8-bit inference device. You create your TensorFlow model, and instead of calling model.predict, there is a different library you have to use. It's very simple, very easy to use. You just have to say tf-lite.load model and then do prediction. So the code doesn't change much. Your model becomes faster. But as we saw, it loses accuracy. Okay, so what is this device? Why is it different from my laptop? How does it, this is a small thing, do inference at 50 FPS, which my laptop CPU can only do at like 5 FPS. So this is a specifically designed device for matrix multiplications. That's the only thing it does nicely. It doesn't support multiple threads. It doesn't support simple instructions. It only supports matrix multiplication. So there is a huge memory buffer which contains the matrices, and one single instruction multiplies those matrices. That's it. That's the only purpose this device is designed for. So when you're running your model on, since most of the deep learning models, all the deep learning models are just matrix multiplications and activations, this device works perfectly for them. So these are called edge inference devices. So there's a paper linked here, you can read about these. It describes how are they different. I will share the presentation, so you don't need to note down the links. This is a very minimalistic, specifically designed ASIC just to process matrix multiplications very fast. Okay, so I showed a segmentation model. The first one was accurate but very slow. The second one was fast but very less accurate. Same thing happens with pose. OpenPose is freely available, extremely slow. It's 0.1 frames per second on a laptop. So we compress, so we train a pose model and compress it in a similar way, and in the end we have a fast but less. So we started with one problem, which was a slow but accurate model. We tried to solve that problem, and now we have two problems: a fast but inaccurate model. So what do we do now? So we try to study what is the problem with fast model, what happens in case of the fast model that the slow model, the problems that are not happening on the slow model. So first thing we saw was that our, actually not, there's no seeing here, we trained the model to work with small images. Small images are processed faster. What this results in is jitter of points. So I am pretty big to be captured in a 256 by 256 image. My body points become very small, my hand becomes a 2 by 2 or 4 by 4 pixel size in a very small image. So there is a lot of jitter. So for example, my hand point may be here, but since the image is very small, it may be detected here. So there is a jitter that happens. Okay, sometimes key points go missing. Let's say this is, we are processing a video here. In one frame, my hand was detected. In another frame, my hand is completely missing now. So key points go missing. Basically very low confidence of that key point in next frame, so it goes missing. But most of these models are trained to work with images. In our case also, it was trained to work on images. We have nothing that is trained to work on videos. Videos have more information. So how do I know that the key point went missing in the next frame? Because I was able to see it in the previous frame. So we have information from previous frames which we can use to predict the next frame's location or correct the next frame's location. And we also have an accurate model. It runs slow, but it's still there. Maybe there is some way we can use that accurate model to guide the fast but inaccurate model. So anybody from electrical engineering here? Okay, less people. Okay, so we can represent this problem as a sensor noise problem. We have 17 sensors, each one detects different body points, and they're all noisy. But we can combine their temporal outputs to create a more accurate state of the current system, Kalman filters. So this is something standard. Please go and read it up. If you have multiple inputs coming and they're all noisy, there is a way to reduce their noise by modeling the state of system, Kalman filters. A more modern way to do it is using LSTMs. So, okay, so what do we want to do here? We basically have a video. In each frame, we are detecting a pose, and sometimes the pose detection is inaccurate and we want to improve its accuracy. So we train an LSTM which takes poses from previous n frames and the current frame and gives a more accurate current frame by using something from previous frame. Let's say my hand is here and in frame 1 it is detected here. Let's say I move my hand a little bit, but the detection moves very far. Human beings don't move that fast. We somehow have to teach the model that. So how do we teach it that? We have the output from accurate pose detector. We can use it to train that model to let it understand how movements really work. So we take an LSTM, give it as input n frames of the accurate pose detector, and the output is the nth frame of the output detector. Sorry, the input is n frames from inaccurate detector and the output is from accurate detector. So the model tries to figure out, if I have n frames of inaccurate outputs, how can I make them more accurate? So in this case, we are still just using the model, just using the inputs from fast detector. We have n fast detector frames and we somehow train it to predict more accurate frames. But even at runtime, we have an accurate detector which we can run in parallel. So let's say I'm running this model, and when it is running, the accurate detector somehow runs in parallel in the background, and every few seconds it figures out a very accurate detection. You need a way to actually feed this back so the fast detector can make its prediction more accurate. Similarly, we can feed it back to the LSTM. Okay, everybody has probably lost me. Now I'm going to ask the question. And the one who answers wins this. What is the problem with this approach? Why would this not work? Okay, we have an LSTM. What are we training it for? We have n inaccurate poses, and we want to predict the nth pose to be more accurate. Okay? And we have one more accurate model which is running in the background. And every n frames, it gives me a very accurate output which is not wrong. And I feed it to the LSTM after those n frames to improve its state. Okay, the output is too late. The LSTM has already gone forward. Basically, I am giving it an accurate output from n frames before. So we need to go back in time, reset the states. The code is there, you can go back and look it up. I'm just explaining it. So we need to go back in time and set the state more correctly. Okay, so this is getting the model to be very fast and very accurate. After doing all this, our model is fast and it is also accurate. So this is a small diagram that explains how all this works together. We have a camera image stream that works at, let's say, 30 fps. We have a fast pose detector that works at 25 or 30 some fps, and a slow pose which works at 1 fps. We take images from them according to the speeds of these detectors and give it to the LSTM, and LSTM processes it and gives her a more accurate fast pose stream. Go back and try it out. It will be something nice to see. Okay.
All right, so
You can. I will run the demo. You can go.
okay. Thanks, Apur. All right, so Apur, can you go to previous slide? Yeah, so let's try to understand this slide. What is happening live when your model is running on the device? Your camera is capturing a frame at some rate, right? It cannot do infinite rate. So most of the cameras operate at 30 fps or 60 fps, which basically means every 33 milliseconds a new frame is coming in. Then you have a model, let's say in this case 2 models, fast pose and slow pose. They both take some time to process that frame and then give you the output. The fast one takes 30 milliseconds. The slower one takes 1000 milliseconds, about a second. Pretty bad, but okay. And then it gives the output to LSTM, which again takes slight time, which is very small in this case, maybe few milliseconds. And then you finally get the output. Now, if this were happening for each frame, if my processing time for all the models was, let's say, 100 milliseconds, the frames are coming at 30 milliseconds, and at each frame, you get a lag of 100 minus 30, 70 milliseconds, and this compounds. With each frame coming in, this lag is going to increase. So what will happen is, over time, you will see a laggy video, and that is not what we want if you are trying to make a real-time system which interacts with user. You don't want the video to like respond after 1 or 2 seconds. So how do we solve this? So one more problem. So Apur solve few problems, then give more problems to us. So, all right. Okay. So one solution is we can just drop some frames. I'll say, okay, I don't process every frame. I just process few frames after my process is finished. Seems a reasonable idea to do, and many people do that as well. A slightly better solution would be instead of doing first in first out like a queue for your frames, you can do a stack. Whichever came last in the camera buffer, you just take that up, process that, and give the process output again to your output video or whatever you have. So that's what we are doing here. So we have a LIFO queue, last in first out, and just a small detail, you clean the queue and it is full. So
We'll demo that.
oh, we can demo what the difference is. So okay.
Okay. Like, this is on this camera.
Okay.
So this is how a normal camera stream behaves. If you see my hand, there is a lag. I have set a random processing time of 100 milliseconds for the models here. This emulates that. Okay, there was some lag. Let me demo it again for those who missed it.
So after about a second, when he closes the hand, you can actually see there. This is not good when you are making a system which is real time.
But the FPS here is fixed as 14. At 14 FPS, there is some lag. Now we create a queue, LIFO queue as you explained, and we insert images into it, and we only take the latest image rather than taking the. Now you see there is no lag. FPS is still same, but there is absolutely no lag. What we are doing is we are basically dropping frames.
Correct.
Your eyes can't notice it as long as it is around 10 to 15 FPS. If we do the same thing at 2 FPS, you will still start noticing it.
So bottom line, if you can manage to get your model processing time to about 100 or 200 milliseconds, you are good. Because you can drop the frames and still not lose the continuous flow of the video. Okay, so next problem. So alright, we got the positions of the people. We're able to manage the flow of the video. Now finally, I have a target pose that a user is supposed to achieve and have an actual person doing it. How do I know that he's doing it well? That's the scoring problem. Like, how do you match two poses? So we'll start with a naive approach. So the naive approach in most cases is you normalize both the frames. So normalization could be you subtract the minimum point and divide it by max by mean. So simple normalization into a 1 by 1 box. So you have two coordinates, right, x and y. So you normalize in both the directions. You get a box of the user, and then do a cosine similarity between all the points.
Yeah, all key points are basically vectors. Whenever we see vectors, we apply similarity. The very basic naive approach.
So this gives about 17 points. So the post detection model will give you 17 XY points along with confidences of each point. When we say a point is missing, we mean that the confidence of the point is very low. It doesn't make sense to even include that in the prediction. Okay, so what's the problem with this very simple approach, which is normalization and then cosine distance? The problem is, let's say I'm doing a pose like this, okay, and I'm normalizing by my extremes, right? Max, mean for the x direction, and suddenly this point goes missing because there's some noise in the background. So then this point is not counted. My box is only this much. The normalization screws up, right? Your distances are way off. Suddenly user was saying 40 square and he's like, okay, 30, 10, what is happening? So how do you solve for that? And probably this is also good use case for machine learning, where you can use data to actually get good scoring function. And we'll show how to do that. So this is method 1. Since poses are mostly static and kind of universal, right? If you name a yoga asana, it's going to remain same whether someone is doing here or in like Delhi or somewhere else. So if you search images for that on Google, you're likely to get very similar images. So you'll end up getting different people doing the same yoga asana for that particular yoga, right? And this is exactly what we want. If you get a lot of data like that and train a simple neural network to get me to classify the pose based on the input image that I'm giving. So that's essentially what we do here.
So there was a problem here. There is a problem here. We need a data set where there are different people who are doing exactly the same pose. Okay, so we have, let's say, 100 classes. In each class, there are different people doing the same pose. Then only we can train a classification model which learns itself to be person size agnostic. How do you get that data? If you search for cycling, you will get different people doing different things. They will not necessarily be in the same body pose. So that's why we went to yoga, because yoga poses are static, fixed poses. They are not verbs. They are not, there is no movement. So when you search for yoga pose, you get different people in looking very similar poses.
So that's the advantage of static poses. So alright, so what we train here is we take 100 plus yoga poses, we scrape a lot of images for them, and we train a classification network. We have like a simple 4-layer network here. You can have a 4-layer convolution network to do that. Okay, next problem.
No,
so
we demo.
Oh, we want to demo this? Okay. Oh, alright, so we'll see whatever we train whether it's working or not. Okay, I'll have to do some yoga poses. Okay. Okay.
Wait.
Okay. See, so it's able to recognize, okay, I'm doing this pose.
Okay, so he's doing something and that is trying to figure out. No, that pose is not here.
Oh, so we do not have that pose in the DB. Okay. Okay, I'm able to do this.
So it's trying to figure out a pose that matches most with what he's doing right now.
Okay.
Do some more.
Dude. No, dude, it's enough. Guys, anyone want to volunteer here to do more poses? I'm happy.
Okay, so we have like a set of 4 or 5 poses and 9 poses actually, and what he does, we try to match it with him to see if the pose matching function is actually working or not. So this shows the most matching with him. So we can see the scoring function is working reasonably well. When he's doing a pose, the pose that is shown here matches with the pose that he has done.
Okay, but yeah. So, but
This
one
was the
problem here.
model.
Okay.
So this was the model. If you
Oh,
want to
this
see
is the 4-layer networks. So we have
Yeah.
4 con layers and 1 final classification layer. So very simple model.
The conv layer is 17 because there are 17 key points. That's it.
Alright, so like you would have noticed, right, we had only fixed set of poses in the system. So it can only classify which it is. What if I want to add a new pose like I did there but it was not there in the system? So are we going to again collect data for that and train the model again and say, okay, I'm going to deploy a new model right now because I added one pose? That's not a good system. That's not a scalable system you want to build for someone, right? So how do you solve that problem? So if we, no, method 1 only. If you have a good understanding of the deep networks, you would appreciate that deep networks, they encode an image into a representation which can be utilized in form of a a vector representation. So what that essentially helps us do is, if for even a new pose, I got a vector representation using my network for the new pose, the vector similarity between a new person doing that pose and an image doing that pose should be less than all other poses. That essentially is the idea that we use here, right? We just use the network to encode the image into a vector. Then you can still use that to do cosine similarity, even for new poses that you didn't train for. Hopefully you are thinking, okay, my model can learn what different poses are and it can capture features which are relevant to classify different poses. So, okay, and that happens so in this case. All right, one problem with this method is, now you collected a lot of images which had slightly different hand positions for the same pose. So the model is not that fine. I mean, when I was doing this pose, my hand could have been like this also slightly, but it still would have said, okay, the pose is correct. But when I'm building a system, I want people to do, very, at a very fine detail, I want them to score so that they feel more comfortable when they're doing correct. That is not happening right now with the current method. So can we come up with a different method for this? So here's a different idea to do that. You pick videos. So in a video, let's say my own video, when I was doing this pose, I started probably doing like this and then did something like this and then reached somewhere. So in a video, if you take a frame which is the accurate representation of the pose, all other frames which are very close to it should be lower distance than frames which are further away in time from it, right? That's the idea. If I started like this, that frame should be more distant than the frame very close to my actual pose. So can we use this idea to train some network which captures this fine detail? And that's the idea here. So we train a triplet network. So we sample triplets. So we sample 3 images. One would be the actual image, which I feel is the right pose. One image will be very close to it in time. Another image will be further than it in time. And we can pick a lot of videos of people doing the poses or something like that to do this. You can sample a lot of triplets like this, train a triplet Siamese network. I'm not going to go into details of what a triplet Siamese network is. You can read about them, it's really cool. And yeah, so this one we trained and it is able to capture the fine differences.
So we'll show that how fine. I'll do this.
Okay, you do this time. We can call someone else up who like. At least we lose weight by doing this. I mean, I don't know about others, but.
Which camera? Wait, sorry.
Screen capture.
Oh, okay. It has to first load the images and get them ready. So we have 1 minute. Okay, we'll ask one more question.
Oh yeah.
We're training 2 models.
What's the problem with this?
Okay. One model was trained for classification and then we used its embedding layer. The problem there was, since it's a classification model, it says this and this are similar so that it can map both of them to similar poses. It is not a very fine-grained model. The second one is trained per person. So for every person, for one person it can say that this pose is similar to this as compared to this, but given 2 different people in 2 different poses, it doesn't work. So again, we started with one problem, we tried to solve it, we have 2 problems now. Any way to solve it? Oh, okay. So this is the result of the fine-grained model. As you can see, this is much, you have to get out of the frame.
Oh, I'm out.
You are here.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Try this at home when there is nobody else. Okay, so this is trying to find a pose similar to mine. This is much fine-grained. The LTR networks works much fine-grained. Okay, so how do we solve this problem now? The LTR one works much fine-grained. The first one was not that fine-grained. The LTR has a problem that it only works when 2 people are nearly similar to each other in body shape.
We are asking this.
We are asking this, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
We haven't solved this problem, yes.
So
we are not going to present the solution. Any ideas? One single idea, okay? Oh, nah.
Actually, that's a good idea.
Don't give a manager's answer. No, you will not get this. Okay. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That's a good
actually.
idea. This is good. Thank you. So we haven't tried that.
Yeah, we'll be honest. We like okay, we are going with first method here right now. But like he said, we thought about the second, combining first and second methods, where we initialize the triplet network with the weights trained from the first network, and hopefully think that that will be a much fine-grained network.
So we have
But we have
also
not done it
hacked
yet.
this together. This is not a product. We also did this pretty much within 11 days. We had a demo to do for a company, and we made this in less than 2 weeks. So this is pretty much a hack. And you can go back home. All the repo is open source. Try it out. Everything. This is not a notebook. I have checked in separate programs, so you can try out separate things. Make something else on your own. Okay. So
Final thing.
yeah. Now that we have these different parts ready, first we have a pose detector which figures out how a person's body is shaped right now. The second one which figures out how far you are from the yoga pose that you wanted to do. And third, yeah, the model is pretty fast now. All the ingredients are ready. Now we need to combine them together and make our final yoga pose. So, okay, code again. Let me show some code. We are the only hack session guys who haven't shown any code. So we have two detectors, fast detector and slow detector. Okay, we have a pose matcher here, and then we run a, okay, we have to drop frames. So we don't use CV2, we use a custom camera library which drops frames. And then we run the Kalman correction model which corrects these poses. And then we run the loop, and we first show a pose, and if the person is in an accurate pose, we move on to the next pose so he can try it out. Okay, let motion show it to you.
Okay.
What do you want to do, squats or yoga?
Dude, it's easy ones, man.
Go back.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the shape he has to get in, and that is his shape right now. Let's see the score climbs up or not. Okay, pose changed.
Dude, I'm okay. Okay, sure.
Hands up, hands up.
Dude, do some yoga poses, no?
Okay, I'll do some
Squats
yoga.
are difficult, man.
You haven't seen the yoga poses I put here.
Okay, I seriously haven't seen them, so.
Okay, this is simple. Start. This is,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, I reached.
Hands up, further.
Dude. Okay, I can do this.
Nice.
Nice, 97. Yes. This is difficult.
It's on video, by the way. Okay, do
This one I can do. Wait.
it's 7-second timer, dude. You put it. Gone.
Too late. Wait, 92. Yeah, I did good.
Okay, so yeah, this is something fun.
99. This I can
This
do
is
best.
standing. Okay, do this. Okay, it's fine.
Okay.
Enough embarrassment for today.
Yeah.
Okay, so we built this pretty fast. You can go home, try it out, and build something else on top of it. Please ping us on GitHub or share it with us on Twitter. Everything was built with TF Lite. Thanks to Google guys, they gifted it to us actually, so we can try out our models. That's it. Any questions?
Yeah, questions.
Close this. Thank you. Come on, one question.
Yeah. Hi. So, will it matter?
Where
if
are you? Wait.
Here.
Okay.
Will it matter if the person is standing close to the camera or far ahead?
I can show that. Do you want to
Well,
see or yes or no answer?
No. Yes or no, or why?
It
why
won't.
will
It won't matter actually. So it works pretty for us. When he was standing there, it was working. When I was standing here, also it was working.
Yeah,
So it is.
remember that I had to go out there and stand.
Yes.
It was trained with variable-sized people in the
Okay.
images, which are very, very far. That Coco data set we use, we also do some augmentation to keep people very far in the image.
So, like one thing you were saying that some new yoga pose is there. In that case, also it will work with the
Yes, it will
people.
work.
Correct.
It learns how to map a key point vector into a pose embedding, into a manifold where poses are closer to each other. If so, what is the problem with using key points? Let's say I have an image where a person is standing in one corner and the person is very large. In another image, a person is standing in the center and the person is not that large but is standing in the same pose. We want to say in some way that these two poses are very similar to each other. We don't want to design a hand-coded function to do this.
Okay.
That's why we trained it this way.
Got it.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Hi. Hey.
Again, where are you? Okay.
Hi. So in this you are using Kalman filters. So have
We are
you-
using an LSTM to because
for the pose detection you have used Kalman also.
not for pose detection, for pose correction,
Eh,
for making it more
so
accurate.
have you tried using particle filters?
Okay, so first of all, Kalman filters was a motivation. We didn't end up using Kalman filters. We used an LSTM to emulate that. So, a Kalman filter basically has a state that gets updated on every sensory input. An LSTM does pretty much the same thing. So, that was a motivation, but we didn't use them because we'll have to write the model of universe for it, linear motion, etc. So, we just use an LSTM and train it to get that model working.
Okay.
No, we haven't tried particle filter. The answer to your question, neither have we tried Kalman filters. We use an LSTM instead, but the motivation came from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi. Hello. Here, towards your left.
Where? Okay.
So thank you for the talk. What I wanted to ask was that right now it's working for a single person, right?
Yes.
So what would you do if you wanted to extend it for like multiple people in the same frame?
I'll explain. So single person it works very very fast because what we do is segmentation. You know segmentation? Okay. So we have 17 heat maps. Each heat map for one body key point, one for hand, one for left hand, one for right hand, one for nose, something like this. In the final 17 heat maps, we just take global maxima. We don't do anything after that. Since we know there's a single person in the image, we don't have to join different body parts to create a person out of it. If there are two people in the image, you'll have to map each key point to one body. Let's say it detects a hand here. You need to figure out which body does this hand belong. This process is called a
If there are two hands, it's very hard for model to point out which hand his is and which is
so you
mine.
have to do some processing, post-processing after this to figure out which part belongs to which body. This is called part affinity field mapping, and we haven't done that. To make the model much faster, we assume there is single person so that we can skip that step. Everything that we have done is a part of that DL model. PAF can't be a part of that model. There is no layer you can write which can do body mapping to parts. You'll have to write separate code in C, and that will run on CPU. It will not run on the inference engine. So we haven't done that. We have assumed single person.
Right. Just because you mentioned that you have a demo to a customer, it would be interesting for you to know that last month there was a paper called PoseNet by TensorFlow, which is able to detect poses in real time. So maybe it can help you.
We know that the PoseNet TF-Lite models are also shared in this step,
Right.
but they are not accurate. The models that they have shared publicly
Like
are not
the one, the demo they showed, it was working like for multiple people in real time. So just for your info, if it helps.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, hi. Yeah.
Where
Yeah. So how can you extend this model to work on mobile devices without internet
this
connection?
TF-Lite models directly work on mobile devices. Once
Okay.
you have converted a model, quantized a model to TF-Lite model, Android already supports TF-Lite directly. So if you go to TensorFlow, if you search for TensorFlow Android, you will get demo code. You can upload the model and render the output there. It's not very difficult. That is actually quite easy. Nobody else? No questions? Okay. I think we have one more question.
So in the setup that you explained to transfer the knowledge from accurate but slower model to inaccurate but faster model,
Yes.
the LSTM is just a method for making the inaccurate model more accurate, and then in
Correct.
the final
So there is
part-
a model to this universe. Things don't move from one frame to another frame very fast.
Yeah.
If my hand was here in this frame,
Yeah.
it won't go here in the next frame.
Yeah, no, that I know. My question was that, so LSTM is just there for correcting the inaccurate model.
Correct.
In the final part that the demo you showed, only the accurate model is.
No,
Uh,
it's using the inaccurate
LSTM.
model. It's using the inaccurate. The accurate model is very slow.
Okay.
It's 0.1 FPS.
Okay.
So that gives something every 10 frames.
Yeah.
Every 100 frames or something.
So LSTM is still
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
also running here.
It's part of the current code.
It's part of the current code.
okay.